Chapter 19. Is there trust between us? Scene 1. Oh my God, that part where they were trying to hide their relationship from their boss? I thought for sure they were gonna get caught. Nah, for real though? That undercover married couple bit had me on the edge of my seat. Soph, I was like, nah, they finna get caught slipping any minute. Listen, if we ever put our story out there, it'd be a whole movie. The movie theater doors swung open, and Ryan and Sophie stepped out into the muggy air, laughing and blending into the pedestrians, who were out enjoying the rare sun on this autumn Sunday afternoon. Things had been going well for them for the most part. Their last mission after the airport fiasco was simple enough and ran smooth, despite the typical life or death threat that always seemed to find themselves involved in. However, there was no bickering or arguments, so to celebrate, the two decided to finally check out the blockbuster Mr. and Mrs. Smith. With shoulders casually bumping each other, they made moves to the parking spot, still recapping the crazy scenes they just watched. But as they approached the car, something caught Ryan's eye across the street. A brightly lit arcade with a large sign proclaiming the arrival of a new VR gaming system. Oh shit, is that the new Aspire game? Ryan thought to herself, her steps slowing as she squinted to read the smaller print on the sign. I've been dying to try that out ever since they announced it last month. Hey, Soph. She stopped just short of the car. I think I want to go check out that new VR game they've got over at the arcade across the street. It's supposed to be this crazy immersive first-person shooter with full-body haptic feedback and everything. She was already fishing her wallet out of her pocket to check how much cash she had on hand. Sophie was surprised by the sudden change in plans. Oh, I thought we were going to grab dinner or something. Maybe try that new deli place we've been talking about? Ryan tried to recall if they'd made concrete plans earlier. The movie had been a spur-of-the-moment decision this morning while they were getting dressed, but she couldn't remember discussing anything beyond that. Did we? I'm sorry, Soph. I didn't think we had anything else on the agenda for today. I just thought. Sophie shrugged. It's fine, never mind. If you want to go play your game, go ahead. Are you sure? I don't want to just leave you if we had plans. Ryan could tell from Sophie's reaction that she was thrown off, disappointed even. And she felt bad about that. She really did. The last thing she wanted was for Sophie to feel like she was ditching her, or that gaming was more important to her than she was, especially as she tried to get their relationship back on track. But at the same time, Ryan was just so amped to try out this new game. Playing has always been her escape, her way to decompress from all the stress and vigor of their job. And after the craziness of the past few weeks, and knowing they had another one coming up in a few days in Denver of all places, she really needed that release. Honestly, it's okay, Sophie played it cool. I know how much you love your gaming, and I'm not really into all that stuff anyway. You go have fun. I'll find something to eat and see you at home later. Ryan studied her face for a long moment, trying to gauge if she was really okay with this change of plans. But her wife had always been good at hiding her true feelings when she wanted to. If you're sure. I'm sure, Sophie chuckled and gently shoved Ryan towards the arcade. Go, enjoy your game. I'll be fine. Okay, I'm going. I'll probably be at it for a few hours, so don't wait up, okay? I'll just grab something to eat on the way home later. Watching Ryan dart across the road towards the arcade, Sophie swallowed hard, trying to ignore the knot tightening in her gut. Chill, it's all good, she told herself. Rye's just mega stressed lately. Needs to reset alone for a bit. Don't read too much into it. But as she climbed into the car, the day suddenly felt a lot colder and lonelier than it had just moments before. She sat there for a long moment, watching as Ryan disappeared into the arcade. Is this how it's going to be from now on? She wondered, hands yet to start the car. Just drifting apart, doing our own things more and more. With a loud sigh, she finally started the car and pulled out of the parking lot, fighting the negative thoughts in her head as she pointed the car towards home, alone. Scene 2. The garden was usually Ryan's hideaway, a place where she could find peace. But today, as she was sitting in the grass, trying to be closer to Mother Earth, even the soft chirping of the birds couldn't calm the storm inside her. She could hear Sophie moving around inside the house, getting ready for the day ahead. It had only been a few days since their last mission, one that had gone so horribly wrong. They had barely made it out alive, and the fallout was far from over. It was a bleak contrast to the week before, when they'd returned from Denver after a successful mission, one of those rare stretches of calm where things had gone right for once. But now, they had a long day ahead of them, filled with tense meetings and difficult conversations. She was sure of it. But before she could face any of that, Ryan needed a moment to herself. So she sat cross-legged on the grass, her laptop balanced on her knees, and dove into her research. For weeks now, she had been consumed by a nagging feeling in her mind since her last conversation with Marquis. His words still left her unsettled. She prided herself on usually being a pro at figuring folks out, seeing past their fronts, but she couldn't get a read on him at all. She'd started with the basics: Google searches, social media stalking, the usual, but this was turning out to be a lot harder than she'd anticipated. Marquise's digital footprint was minimal. No social media accounts, no personal website, not even a stray photo from a company picnic. It was like the man was a ghost. The lack of information on him was frustrating, but not entirely surprising. In their world, this was pretty much the norm. Ryan knew that better than anyone. After all, she and Sophie were hardly social media butterflies themselves. Oh sure, they had their Instagram account, a carefully curated highlight reel of their adventures and vacations. To anyone scrolling through their feed, it would look like they spent their days lounging on exotic beaches and sipping cocktails at the latest hotspots. Yes, some of the photos were real, like when Ryan caught Sophie snoring and drooling in the back seat of a taxi and posted it on the gram. But the reality, of course, was far less pretty. What those hand-selected photos didn't show were the danger and bloodbaths that sneaked just out of frame. It was all part of the game. So really, was it any a surprise that Marquis kept his cards close to his chest? She knew she'd have to be patient. He was a talker, for sure, but he played his cards close to his chest. Getting him to open up, to share something real and personal, that would take time and trust. But she was okay with that. She wasn't looking to uncover some deep, dark secret. She just wanted to understand him better, to build a friendship based on more than just surface-level jabs and shared experiences. Lost in her thoughts, Ryan didn't hear her wife approach until she was right behind her. Startled, she slammed her laptop shut, a reflexive action that she immediately regretted. She scrambled to gather the papers strewn around her, shoving them into a folder, but it was too late. Sophie squinted, side-eyeing Ryan's sketchy moves. "What are you doing?" Her tone more curious than accusatory. "Nothing," Ryan lies, her voice a little too high, a little too quick. "Just some research for some new tech." She knew how Sophie felt about Marquis, so she didn't want to give any indication of what she was truly doing. Sophie's looked between the laptop and the folder held tightly in Ryan's hands. She knows her wife and knows when she's hiding something. But before she can press further, she remembers the reason she came out here in the first place. "We're going to be late for therapy," she says, glancing at her watch. "We should get going." Ryan's shoulders slumped deflatedly. Therapy. The last thing she wants to do right now is sit in a room and dissect her feelings, to poke and prod at the issues in their relationship. But she knows she can't avoid it forever. Okay, let's bounce. She pushed herself up, brushing the grass off her jeans as she stood. Let me just grab my car keys. You don't need them? I'm driving, Sophie said, not leaving it up for debate. I'm driving, Ryan muttered to herself, mocking Sophie with a frown. Asshole. Scene 3. Dr. Anissa Pierce's office, therapy session. So how have things been at the meat processing plant? Dr. Pierce asked, while balancing a notebook on her lap. They've been coming to Dr. Pierce for the last couple of years, spinning a tale of their lives as butchers, a cover story that allows them to discuss their real problems without revealing their true identities. During their visits, the energy was much higher in year 1, and Ryan and Sophie were practically sitting on each other's laps with how close they were. Now, over the last year, the distance between them has grown with each visit. While they may not have noticed it, Dr. Pierce was very observant. Even today, Sophie was on one end of the couch, and Ryan, with her shades on as if it was sunny inside the office, was on the other side. It also didn't help that these two had on black, like they were going to someone's funeral. It's been a tough week. We had a big order come in, and some of the meat was mishandled. Dr. Pierce nodded, her pen scratching across the notepad. Mishandled? How? The cuts were all wrong, Ryan interjected with frustration. We had specific instructions, but someone decided to go off book and do their own thing. Sophie squinted her eyes, not about to let Ryan tell this story on her own. Well, maybe if someone had followed the agreed-upon strategy, we wouldn't have had this problem. Totally missing the subtext of their coded language, Dr. Pierce moved to the edge of her seat, full of concern and curiosity. It sounds like there was a breakdown in communication. In any workplace, it's important that everyone is on the same page, working towards the same goal. Ryan scoffed, folding her arms across her chest in a defensive posture. Easier said than done. Dr. Pierce turned to her, head cocked to the side. Why do you say that, Ryan? Because some people think they know better than everyone else, Ryan retorted sarcastically. They think they can just do whatever they want. Consequences be damned. And some people need to learn to trust their partners, Sophie added. They need to understand that they're not in this alone. Dr. Pierce raised a hand, sensing the escalating tension. Okay, let's take a step back. It's clear that there are some underlying issues here, some resentments that need to be addressed. She focused on Sophie, open and non-judgmental. Sophie, when you say that Ryan needs to trust you, what do you mean by that? Sophie took a second to gather her thoughts, trying to put it in a way that made sense. It means that we're a team. We need to have each other's backs to make decisions together. But lately, it feels like Ryan is just doing her own thing without considering how it affects me or the business. Dr. Pierce nodded, jotting down another note. And Ryan, how do you respond to that? I'm just trying to do what's best for the company. Ryan shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Sometimes that means making tough calls, even if they're not popular. Ryan tried to validate her choices, but her words just hung there. Dr. Pierce gave a slight nod, expression unreadable. But before she could weigh in, Ryan's mind slipped away, revisiting a dark memory that still haunted her. Flashback. The bougie private jet cut through the clouds, a shiny flecks of money and tech, but inside the atmosphere was suffocating. Ryan and Sophie were posing as journalists. Sitting across from Amir Kasim, an affluent philanthropist and covert black bat benefactor. Their mission? Keep his ass safe from the Fever, a barbaric terrorist gang plotting to hijack the flight. The scene from the briefing room earlier kept replaying in Ryan's head. I'm telling you, Soph, we need to be proactive about this. Sitting back and waiting for shit to go down ain't gonna cut it. And I'm telling you, Ryan, we stick to the plan. We must assess the situation, identify the threats, and neutralize them systematically. These guys are savages, and they don't care about suicide missions. No unnecessary risks. Right. Because playing it safe always works out so well. The clash over the right strategy to keep Kasim safe had them both second-guessing each other's decision-making skills. Now seated, comfortably sipping champagne, Kasim was really passionate as he talked about all the charity work he's into and answered every fake question with sincerity. Ryan and Sophie jotted notes down, but they were both writing nonsense while also keeping an eye out for their surroundings on the plane. The aircraft jerked violently without notice, causing the cabin lights to blink. The few staffers who joined Kasim on board were hollering their heads off when men in masks came rushing out of the cockpit, strapped and ready to cause havoc. The Fever crew was making their move. Ryan wasted no time as she went full beast mode on the hijacker closest to her. She decked him with a mean right hook, then swept his legs to snatch his gun away, skidding across the floor. Meanwhile, Sophie was on it, shielding Kasim and guiding him towards the tail section to keep him safe. The fight kept going, and anyone could tell that Ryan and Sophie weren't on the same page. Ryan let the adrenaline take over and went rogue, chasing after one of the hijackers. Sophie was stuck between protecting Kasim like she was supposed to and backing up her partner. She paused, unsure what to do. That momentary hesitation proved costly. Seizing the opportunity, a hijacker lunged forward, grasping Kasim and pressing the barrel of a gun against his temple. "Stand down," his voice muffled behind the mask, "or he dies." Ryan, ever defiant, refused to lower her weapon. "You're lying. You won't kill him," she challenged. "You need him alive." The hijacker's eyes thinned and his finger tightened on the trigger. "Are you willing to bet his life on that? Or yours?" Noticing the situation going left, Sophie moved to de-escalate. "Ryan, stand down," she commanded. "We can't risk it. Let's stick to the plan. Trust me." But Ryan disregarded her plea and rolled her eyes. Trust. She thought internally that her wife had a lot of nerves. She took a step forward, fixed on the hijacker. "Let him go and we can talk." "I'm not backing down. You're not getting out of here with him." "You're in no position to negotiate, bitch." The hijacker's jaw clenched, his patience wearing thin. In a rapid motion, he shifted his aim from Kasim to Ryan. "Fine then, you die first." Sophie's instincts kicked in, and she fired her weapon a split second later. Simultaneously, the hijacker crouched to the floor, and the bullet that was meant for him found a different target. Kasim stumbled, grunting as the shot ripped through his skin, sending his body to the floor. Sophie wasted no time squeezing off another round on the last hijacker who had been taunting Ryan. Ryan rushed to Kasim's side, her hands already applying pressure to the wound. "Stay with me, Kasim," she begged. She began CPR in a desperate attempt to keep him alive. Sophie raced to the cockpit and slammed open the door. "Land the fucking plane now!" The pilots obeyed without question. The landing was tough, but the tires eventually came to a screech on dusty sand, somewhere in White Sands National Park in New Mexico. Thankfully, Black Bat's authorities were there waiting for them, because they hadn't left the country yet and flooded the aircraft. Soon after, they carried out the bodies, each one covered in a white sheet. Kasim was among the bodies wrapped up in those sheets. The jet stood silently by, witnessing Ryan and Sophie's shared devastation. Now, with 2 botched ops under their belts, the first stains after a previously flawless 2-year run, Black Bat's 3-strike policy cast an ugly cloud above them, a persistent warning that one more screw-up would unleash repercussions they both dreaded to even think about. End flashback. As the flashback fades, Dr. Pierce senses the shift in energy. "Sophie, earlier, You mentioned feeling like Ryan isn't considering how her actions affect you. Can you tell me more about that? It's like she's making decisions that impact both of us without talking to me first, almost as if she's keeping secrets from me. That's not fair, Ryan argues. I'm just trying to do what's best for us. Yeah, but you're not thinking about our future. Your future? Dr. Pierce prompts. Her pen stopped over her notebook. Sophie shifts in her seat, suddenly uncomfortable. She glances at Ryan, seeing the hurt and frustration in her eyes. Yeah, she says, her voice quieter now. Our future. Like starting a family. Ryan's head snaps up. Here we go again. Starting a family? Soph, we've talked about this. We agreed that it's not the right time with our jobs. No, you said that, not me. Sophie's voice raised. And when will it be the right time, Ryan? When we're too old? When we've missed our chance? You promised that we'd eventually talk about it. Yes, I did say that, but I didn't mean so soon. Damn, give me some time. I'm still young. You're in your 30s, Ryan. You're not some kid fresh out of college anymore. Are you trying to call me immature? What? No, when did I say that? Okay, you two, take a breather and please stop yelling at each other, Dr. Pierce asked them nicely. Sophie, it sounds like having children is something that's really important to you. Sophie nodded, her voice rough with emotion, like the conversation had been stuck in the back of her throat forever. Yeah, it is. I know it's not easy, with our demanding job and everything. But I can't help but feel like we're missing out on something. Like we're putting our lives on hold for a job that seems never ending. Dr. Pierce was still so utterly confused. I'm really trying to understand how meat processing is so demanding. I'm not judging, but it feels like I'm missing something here. We own our own companies, Dr. Pierce. We have so many employees and responsibilities. It's not just about cutting meat. It's about managing people, making tough decisions, and ensuring the business stays afloat. Sophie paused, her eyes going to Ryan before continuing. And then there's the competition, the constant need to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. It's a lot of pressure, and it takes up so much of our time and energy. I see. That does sound like a lot to handle, on top of maintaining a healthy relationship. Sophie nodded, her shoulders sagging. Exactly. And sometimes it feels like the job is taking over everything, leaving no room for anything else. When you guys first started your relationship, did you tell Ryan that you wanted kids? Can't say I did, Sophie responded, shaking her head. Honestly, it wasn't something that I wanted either at the time. I was career-focused, and so was Ryan, so we bonded over that, but... She gestured towards her wife. I mean, you see her. I can't help but dream of starting a family together. She's incredible, and when she's around kids, it's so natural for her. I know she'd be an amazing mother. She's the reason why I want this. The hard edges on Ryan's face began to smooth out. Hearing Sophie say those words meant everything to her. She had no idea her wife felt that way, that she was the reason Sophie wanted to start a family. It was still a lot to process. Baby, Ryan said more softly, you're amazing too. You know that, and you know how I feel about you? And I get it, I do. But we've talked about this. I haven't really changed my mind about it yet. I still need time. Sophie's eyes fell to her hands as she nervously played with her fingers, intertwining them. It's not just about having kids, Rye. It's about trust. About being on the same page and making decisions together. I know, I wish we could start over, Go back to the beginning. before everything got so complicated. An uneasy, nervous feeling came over Sophie, her mind racing as worry took hold. What do you mean start over? Like without me? What? No. No, Soph, that's not what I meant at all. I just meant I wish we could go back to when things were simpler. When we trusted each other completely, without all these doubts between us. Seizing the moment, Dr. Pierce inched nearer, propping her elbows against her legs. Trust and confidence are the foundation of any partnership, and it's evident you two have some trust obstacles to surmount. Sophie, what would it take for you to feel like you can trust Ryan again? Sophie sat back as she considered the question. The seconds ticked by, expanding into an uncomfortable silence. Dr. Pierce waited patiently while Ryan's eyes searched her wife's face, searching for any hint of a response. Hello, Sophie. Ryan inserts with an edge of annoyance creeping in. Sophie parted her lips, ready to respond, but the sudden chime of Dr. Pierce's timer interrupted her, signaling the end of their hour-long session. It looks like we'll have to pick this up next time. Dr. Pierce offered an apologetic smile. But I want you both to think about what we've discussed today. Trust, honesty, and open communication are the keys to a healthy relationship. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. Also, I think you guys spend a lot of time together working, and I think that may be adding to the stress. Take some quality time for yourselves. I think you'll show up better for each other with a little personal TLC. They nodded and rose from the couch. They shook Dr. Pierce's hand, mumbling their thanks before heading out into the lobby. Ryan glanced at her watch. Shit. We still have to go meet Luke. Can you hold my purse while I run to the bathroom? Sure, Sophie said flatly as she grabbed the offered bag. She sank into one of the stiff chairs in the lobby. Ryan's purse clutched in her lap. She saw a couple shuffling into Dr. Pierce's office, looking happy and laughing with each other, and immediately felt envious. Sophie missed the days when she and Ryan consistently shared that same effortless connection, back when they could finish each other's sentences and communicate with just one glance. Sometimes they would fall back into those habits, and everything would be great. But more often than not, lately, it felt like they were speaking different languages. She puffed out another sigh while her fingers drummed against the fresh leather of Ryan's purse. Every day was a struggle to get back on the same page. But Sophie wasn't giving up yet. Scene 4. The car ride from their therapy session to Black Bat headquarters was silent. Sophie's eyes stayed fixed on the road, merging onto light traffic, while Ryan, in the passenger seat, watched the unfamiliar streets pass by, her brow furrowed in confusion. Sophie, where are we going? I thought we were headed to Black Bat for our review. We are? But I know a shortcut. What shortcut? This isn't the direction of the agency. No reply came from Sophie, and her focus was locked on driving. Ryan huffed, slouching in her seat. Watching the dashboard clock tick away made her insides twist up tighter with every wasted minute. Just as she was about to voice her concerns again, Sophie made a sharp left turn, and the well-known outline of the Black Bat building came into view. They pulled into the parking lot with just minutes to spare. Obviously, I knew where I was going, right? Sophie was unable to hide her cocky smirk. Ryan rolled her eyes, grabbing her bag from the back seat. Yeah, but you don't have to be an asshole about it, she mumbled. That wasn't me being an asshole. That was me knowing Google Maps. They made their way into the building, still bickering. Once they stepped off the elevator, they were greeted by the sight of Luke with a serious face as he ushered them into a conference room. The room was bare, just a long table and a few chairs. Luke took a seat at the head of the table, gesturing for Ryan and Sophie to sit across from him. Ryan and Sophie shared a look, both thinking, this won't be pretty. They settled into their seats, shoulders squared like they were about to take a hit, ready to face the music, whatever it might be. Let's get started, agents. We have a lot to discuss. Today, we'll be going over your official quarterly performance review. He opened a file in front of him, scanning the pages. First, let me say that your individual skills and accomplishments are impressive, he said sincerely. Ryan, your expertise in programming and engineering have been essential to the success of numerous missions. Your ability to think creatively and adapt under pressure, like during the Santa Cruz del Islote operation, has been a game changer. I've also noticed a significant improvement in your hand-to-hand combat and tactical decision-making, which is a testimonial to your dedication and Sophie's guidance. Ryan smiled at that, feeling a bit better about how this conversation had started. Sophie, your background and expertise in weapons, tactical planning, and covert operations have been the foundation of many successful missions. Your leadership and strategic thinking have gotten the team out of countless difficult situations, like the complex extraction in the Swiss Alps. I've also seen growth in your emotional intelligence and ability to read people, which has been vital in navigating complex interpersonal dynamics. Sophie nodded gratefully. As a team, you two are exceptional. Your ability to work seamlessly together has allowed you to tackle some of our most challenging assignments. The way you anticipate each other's moves and adapt on the fly is proof of your deep bond and commitment to the mission. When I made the call to arrange your marriage and partnership, I knew it was a risk. Putting two strong-willed individuals together is always a gamble. But I had a gut feeling that your combined talents and shared values would make you an unstoppable force. The agents accepted the compliment with a satisfied smile. However, Luke's demeanor soon changed. However, I would be remiss if I didn't address the latest moments where your personal relationship has threatened to interfere with your professional duties. The incident during the Qasim operation is a prime example of how emotions can cloud judgment in high-stakes situations. As your director, it's my responsibility to ensure that you maintain the necessary boundaries and focus to carry out your missions effectively. They knew he was right. They had let their problems bleed into their work. I need you both to understand the gravity of this situation. Lives depend on your ability to work together and trust each other implicitly. If you can't resolve your issues and you fail another mission, I will have no choice but to enforce the consequences we discussed when you first joined the program. He turned to Ryan. Ryan, remember when you first started with us? I made it clear that this was your second chance, your shot at redemption. But that opportunity came with conditions. Should you fail to meet expectations, or should you become a liability rather than an asset? Your dismissal will be permanent, and we will send you back to where we found you. We are both fully aware of the implications that would have for you. He then shifted to Sophie. And Sophie, I know you haven't forgotten our conversation about the stakes involved. Should you falter or turn into a burden, Black Bat will be compelled to sever all connections with you. This could result in you being exchanged with one of our overseas affiliates and leveraged as a negotiating tool. You'll find yourself in a foreign prison or something else far gruesome. Luke leans back, surveying them both. I don't want it to come to that. You're both exceptional agents with so much potential. But you have to understand that the work we do here, the secrets we keep, the lives we protect... IT all hinges on the reliability and effectiveness of our operatives. We can't afford weak links or personal drama jeopardizing anything. So I need you to fix this. Work through your issues and come back stronger than ever. Because if you don't, if you let your relationship problems compromise your work again, I won't have a choice. I'll have to take action, no matter how much I might regret it personally. Do you understand what's at stake here, agents? We understand, sir, Sophie said. We'll do whatever it takes to get back on track. 'See that you do, Luke nodded, closing the file. Dismissed. They left the conference room, nearly colliding with Julia, who was rushing down the hallway. She stopped short, not surprised to see them. "Hey guys, how did the review go?" Sophie just shook her head, not in a headspace to talk about it, so she gave a tight smile and pushed past her friend and heading for the elevator. Ryan hung back for a minute. "It wasn't the best, but we'll figure it out." "Damn, that sucks," Julia commiserated. "But listen, you know I'm just a text away if you need to talk it out or anything, okay?" Ryan caught up to Sophie. Once the elevator doors were about to close, they were left to wonder how they would rise to the challenge and find a way to mend their partnership and their relationship. The stakes had never been higher, and the path forward had never been less clear. As the elevator descended and Ryan leaned against the wall, closing her eyes, Sophie watched her, with 1,000,002 things running through her mind that she wanted to say to her wife. Suddenly, Ryan's eyes opened, feeling that Sophie was staring, and she turned to face her. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure, what is it?" "Back in therapy, when Dr. Pierce asked what it would take for you to trust me again, you didn't answer. Why was that?" Sophie's shoulders tensed as she stared down at her shoes. Her response was barely a whisper. "I don't know." "Come on, Soph. You can't keep avoiding this." "I'm not avoiding anything." "Okay, fine. I'll ask the question again. Do you trust me?" Sophie froze up for a beat, her jawline becoming rigid like she didn't want to go there. "I do trust you," she said finally. "I do?" An ironic half grin showed across Ryan's face. "Then why was it so hard for you to say that earlier with Dr. Pierce?" "I was gonna say something, but..." Sophie trailed off, shaking her head. Her shoulders dropped like she was giving up. "Honestly, I don't even know." Ryan just rolled her eyes, turning away from Sophie. She didn't say anything else. Internally, Ryan's mind raced. She thought back to what Dr. Pierce said and agreed that maybe they just needed some time apart. Not a breakup, not anything drastic, but just some breathing room. They did everything together. Their work and personal lives were so meshed that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. Maybe they needed to find things that didn't include each other, hobbies or interests that were just their own. When they approached the vehicle, Sophie paused and chuckled bitterly. "Do you want to drive back?" she asked sarcastically. "You know, to make sure I'm not taking any shortcuts?" Ryan rolled her eyes. Rather than engage further, she simply climbed into the passenger side, letting the comment go. Sophie's grin disappeared as she breathed out loudly. She guessed Ryan didn't find that funny. "I was just asking," she mumbled, taking her spot behind the steering wheel. They pulled out of the parking lot, and Ryan put her sunglasses on, leaning her head back against the headrest. After a few minutes, she spoke up. "Can we try not to fight this weekend? I just want to enjoy the few days we have off without all of the extra shit." "The extra shit?" Sophie repeated, putting extra emphasis on mimicking Ryan's tone in that sarcastic way only she could pull off. "Sophie, I'm not playing." Sophie's tone matched Ryan's. "And I'm not playing, but yeah, I got you." "I don't want to fight or argue either, Rye. The shit is draining." Ryan nodded, turning up the radio. "I couldn't agree with you more." The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Something had to give. Scene 5. It was one of those warm days in the city when Ryan and Sophie hit the streets to meet Iris at the new spot everyone's been raving about lately. The events of the previous day, the therapy session, the disastrous performance review, still was on their minds, but they were determined to put on a brave face for their friend. They approached the table where Iris was waiting, and Ryan reached out, taking Sophie's hand and giving it a quick squeeze. Iris looked up, smiling wide as she spotted them. Well, 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 look who finally decided to show up. Sophie rolled her eyes, sliding into her seat. Sorry, we got held up. Oh, I bet you did. Let me guess. You two were getting a little held up in the car before you came in? Ryan damn near spit out her water, while Sophie let the menu drop out of her hands. What? No, I was just helping Sophie find her phone. She dropped it under the seat. Flashback. The drive to the cafe was silent, except for the music playing in the background. But Ryan couldn't resist sneaking peeks at Sophie as she maneuvered through the midday traffic. Even when her wife rotated on and off on her shit list on any given day, Ryan was powerless to resist just how sexy her woman looked, especially in this red shirt she was rocking today. What? Sophie asked, catching Ryan out of the corner of her eye. Why you looking at me like that? Like what? Like you want to bite me. Well, now Ryan was conflicted about that. It was true in more ways than one. When Sophie pissed her off, which was more often than not these days, Ryan wanted to bite her damn face off. But then there were other times. Like right now when she looked at her fine-ass wife and wanted to take a bite in a completely different way. To nibble and suck and taste every inch of her. It's hard to stay mad at pretty girls, Ryan thought frustratingly. Out loud, she just smirked. Maybe I do want to bite you, among other things. Ryan, we can't just ignore everything that's going on between us. I'm not ignoring it, Ryan protested, her hand drifting to Sophie's thigh. But just because we're going through some shit doesn't mean I stop wanting you. I always want you. She began to rub small circles on wife's leg, her fingers inching higher with each pass. Sophie bit her lip, pressing harder on the gas. Sophie's skin was on fire everywhere Ryan touched. It was always like this with them. Even in the middle of their worst fights, their physical connection was never compromised. We can't just fuck our way out of this, Sophie thought, even as her body screamed at her to give in, to let Ryan's hands drive away all the confusion and pain. We need actually to deal with our stuff, or we'll never get back to where we were. She opened her mouth to say as much, but what came out instead was a shaky breath as she fought to keep her focus on the busy streets. Rye, you're gonna make me crash? Well, then I guess you better pull over. Sophie hesitated for a moment, weighing her options. Then, with a quick glance in the rearview mirror, she swerved into the nearest vacant parking lot, throwing the car into park. She turned to face Ryan with dark eyes. Well, Ryan didn't need to be told twice. She reached over and unbuckled Sophie's seatbelt, her hands already working on the button and zipper of her jeans. Scoot your seat back. Sophie did as she was told, sliding her seat as far back as it would go. By the time she had finished adjusting, Ryan's fingers were already sneaking under the lining of her panties. End flashback. Iris hummed, her face making it clear she wasn't buying it. Sure. 'Cause I know when I drop my phone, it takes me a good 20 minutes to find it. It was a really tight space, okay? Hard to reach. Sophie tried to explain. I'm sure it was, Iris said, clearly enjoying watching Sophie squirm. Ryan took another sip of her water, trying to hide her smile behind the glass, while her friend continued, all sorts of tight spaces in a car, huh? Riz, leave her alone. You know how skinny these phones are nowadays. So, y'all really think I'm Boo Boo the Fool, huh? I know what freshly fucked looks like. And Sophie, you're looking like the cover girl. Iris, for real? Ryan said, between fits of giggles. Hey, at least y'all are getting some. A sister has been starving in these streets. All right. Are y'all done clowning me? Sophie snatched up the menu again. What's been new with you lately, Iris? Oh, Same old, same old. Work is crazy, especially with that attack on Gotham Airport a few weekends ago. Rye, I was so happy when y'all told me you had nearly missed that shit. Iris shook her head, not even wanting to think about her two friends having to experience that. Ryan and Sophie both took a sip of their water at the same time. Little did Iris know. The lunch progressed, and Ryan and Sophie did their best to keep up the normalcy. They laughed at Iris's jokes and shared stories about their own lives, carefully avoiding any mention of the stress that had been cooking between them. "So I have some news," Iris said. "I'm moving to the city, actually. I found this great apartment just a few miles from you guys." "Wait, seriously?" Ryan was genuinely surprised and happy to have her best friend near. "Iris, that's amazing." Sophie nodded, her own smile a little more hesitant. "Congratulations. When do you move in?" "Soon, actually. Which reminds me, Ryan, I'm going to need your help. You know, with the heavy lifting and all that." "Of course. I got you. It'll be fun. It's been a minute since we spent more than an hour together." "Do you need me to help too?" Sophie asked, more than okay to lend extra help. Ryan quickly shook her head, reaching out to take Sophie's hand. No, I've got this, Soph. You don't need to worry about it." Even with those words out, Ryan still felt a little bad inside. The truth was, a part of her was hyped to kick it with Iris solo for a bit, to have a friend to chat with, some way not all caught up in the drama with her wife. Plus, Dr. Pierce did say they should do more things alone. Sophie, for her part, was trying to answer questions internally. Why didn't Ryan want her help with moving Iris? Was it really just about giving Sophie a break? Or was there something more to it? Something Ryan wasn't telling her? It wasn't just about the move, though. It was about all the little things, all the ways Ryan seemed to be pulling away from her. The secret research on her laptop, the random solo hangouts, all the time she spent with Alice or talking to Marquise. Sophie knew her wife needed her space, her independence. She respected that, even admired it. Lately, though, it has felt like more than just needing some alone time. It felt like Ryan was actively shutting her out, keeping parts of herself hidden away. Was she holding Ryan back from living the life she truly wanted?